Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Fantastic. I love the optimistic tone that went towards the end of the conversation. Well, in the last half an hour, I guess, about how it depends on us, and that we changing our ideas and our beliefs, we can change the system, and we must.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I know in your work that you do a bunch around inclusion, you do a lot about entrepreneurship. I'd love to hear a little bit about, just building off that thread, what it looks like to you to start bringing some of those voices in so that we can have a better conversation or a different conversation at least than the one that has kind of dominated our psyche.
Yeah. And I think that today is a special day on bringing the subject of diversity and how it's important to have all these voices heard and these different points of view and opinion and the same with the social vulnerable people, right? So the past 2 years, I was directing an organization that was doing digital empowerment for underprivileged kids in favelas here in Brazil and in other countries. And it's so important because with technology and with not only using technology, but creating technology and understanding, how it can help you and build your future, but also help you consume information and understand fake news and what is real. It gives you a voice, right? It makes you to be heard, to be included as a citizen and become part of the democracy. And it's important. Like, we have many solutions. Like, here in Brazil, we have more or less, I think, around 15 million people living in favelas, and the economy, the amount of money that circulates in these areas is huge, right? So there's a lot to be built of products and services to those that live there. So does it make sense for someone outside or for a specific, entrepreneur of the city to build something for that population? Or does it make sense for those that are living in the area, that understand the problems, that understand the needs, to actually build something for themselves and for their peers? So I think that it's super important that we make sure to include everybody, all the points of view, the diversities, because then it will be a much richer economy and more socially equal as well.
What's something that you've seen happen, in the favelas since COVID that you kind of see as an example of that sort of inclusion, not just of voice, but of like presence and action, making a difference?
Yeah, so now it's certainly a time where we need to highlight, right, these social inequalities, because here in Brazil we are the second largest number of infected people, and probably we might be even the first, because the number of tests here are very low. It should be around, I think, 500,000 a day, and what we've been doing is we tested less than 1 million during all the period of the crisis here. So we're testing very low, and so who knows, the number of infected could be much worse. And the issue is that in the favelas per se, how do you create social isolation, right? How do you do home office, or there's no infrastructure, there's no, people are there, 20 people living in the same tiny house, and a lot, I think Rahul early on in the conversation mentioned that, of course, it's true for Mumbai as well, and the slums there. But so a lot of the issues that we're raising and that we're facing now it brings a light into the inequality and to the actual like root problems that we have in large cities with such social inequality, right? So for instance, hospital beds, there are okay number of hospital beds in the city, but if you talk about like public health, it's a disaster, right? So these people, they don't have access to these beds. So how is it gonna be? Like, of course, the number of deaths in this population would be much worse. So I think it's even more necessary and valuable movements and organizations that are being built in the slums, right? Right now I'm part of a movement called União Rio. It's something like unity for the city, with executive, with government officials, with social entrepreneurs, and just to fundraise to help bring food, build hospital beds and bring equipments to healthcare, and at the same time help communities, right? And the social organizations that are part of these communities, they're essential in the logistics. So in identifying who to deliver. So we built like such a robust logistics in such a short time. And it is super important to have all these local players part of it. Otherwise, it would be much more inefficient to try to just organize something new or without their collaboration.
Right, because the favelas have a social system, a way of distributing, a way of moving capital, a way of communicating. And if you just try to, impose something different, it's going to be way more expensive and probably way less effective. But one of the things that you were talking about before kind of caught my ear, which is, the kind of troubles with public health. Like they are certainly in Brazil, but they're not in Brazil alone. Like in America, we've had this very strong move toward privatization. And even though we spend more on healthcare than pretty much any country, like we have a lot of spending going into private health and no significant improvements in public health. Actually, a weird sort of retreat on vaccines and understanding of science and all that sort of thing. So how do you kind of, because there is the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that can start from within a favela or within any, person in any global citizen, and to try to go create something new. But then there's points and times where we all need to come together and coordinate, as a public. Ergo, the idea of public health. How do you go and place that in your kind of sensibility of what to be working on in this time?
I totally agree. I think it's a very important time where we actually need to come together. And there's no kind of divide or us and them, or it's just, people coming together to solve issues that will affect everybody. It's not that it will affect only, a portion of the population. Everybody's going to affect, like it's all part of the same network, of the same economy, of the same. So we need to do something together, and it's working together. It's sharing. What's my expertise? What's yours? What can we build out of here? Let's join forces. Let's join hands. Let's build. Yeah. Do you have extra money from this or from that? Let's build the field hospitals. We have over 3 field hospitals, and let's fight against corruption, for instance. It's unbelievable that recently we just found that the government is involved in a corruption scandal regarding, now in these days, money that was being put to build field hospitals to treat. Like, this is unbelievable, right? So I think the population in this type of moment where everybody is like emotionally tied to the issue, like these sort of things that happen, they are voiced, they are showed in social media, internet, and technology are ways to, to highlight the situation. And it reached a point which, no, we don't accept this anymore. We don't accept, some, political position of our federal government. It's not possible. Let's use our social media to voice that. And we can. So, I mean, we're in the middle of a political crisis, in the middle of this huge healthcare crisis, right? So it's tough times for our country.
I mean, to your point, it's like there's a sharpening and a clarification. There's a clarification when you have this type of corruption, because I don't know, there's always been political corruption in all of these different governments of the world, but there's a sharpening when it's happening at such an important time for public health, and it's directly into the funds that are to build field hospitals and save people's lives and limit a pandemic.
Another example, like today, I heard that some of our donations that are going to specific slums, the militiamen, which are the men that control some of the slums, they already mentioned that, listen, next time you're here, make sure that we organize this together because some is coming from me, right? So this is some of the challenges that you have to face in cities with these type of problems.
Well, I mean, I feel like there's both a sharpening of the ways to lose, and we've been talking about a couple of them. And I also think there's this opportunity of sharpening what it looks like to win. And what I mean by that, is that for forever, we've basically just said, oh, the winners are the people that have the highest net worth. They're going to be on the magazine covers. Oh, this is a great business leader. This is, whatever. Net worth equals human worth is our basic sentiment. And that's what it is meant to win. And what those winners have done with that is, they have gone private with everything. They could say, oh, well, I have private healthcare and it's fantastic. So your public healthcare, whatever. But I think all of that was built off of a obviously unstable and untrue myth, because if the populace is unhealthy, it doesn't matter if you have great private healthcare. The restaurants that you love are still going to shut down. You still won't be able to, move freely in space. Like all the things that, you kind of hold up as your superior access through, private resources suddenly actually doesn't have the value that you think it does. And that basically meant that the underlying construct that just accumulating more net worth is not the way that you win. There must be some, improved sensibility of what winning is, which is both about, being inventive, bringing new things to light in the spirit of entrepreneurship, but doing so in a way that a lot of people come along, not just, a handful of people with fantastic houses and private jets and all that sort of thing. And I think we should flip the script on holding that up as a sort of life that people aspire to. When Jonas Salk, basically gave away his vaccines for free. And in a world where, we just only believe net worth equals human worth, he should be a billionaire. And 1/10 of the people should have the vaccines that ultimately got them. But back then, at least, we had a different sensibility of what success was that included, if you help a lot of people, truly help them, even if you didn't make money from it, then that is worth holding up and saying that this is a worthy endeavor. And I feel like we have lost that to some extent. And this time period requests of us to redefine what winning is, as well as sharpening our understanding of losing.
I totally agree. And hopefully this will be, a tipping point in time where we're gonna reframe what success means for us, what power means for us, and what we'll do with it. Because you're completely right. And here in Brazil, the philanthropy culture is very, very poor or inexistent. With all the problems that we have, social equality is huge, and you have people driving such expensive cars and in their helicopters, and that do absolutely nothing to give back to society, or even to help, even share knowledge, mentor someone, right? That can start their own business. You don't need only to donate money. There's so many initiatives that you can run and empower people to do, you know, socially good, to reduce this gap. So hopefully, like in this reality where people are facing, because most people from higher upper classes, they have help, they have, as you mentioned, they go to restaurants, they're used to relying on services from people that are not socially privileged as they are, and just not having help around them, or not being able to go to your manicure or do your hair, you know, that suddenly is like, oh wow, so let me value more these kind of services that I don't normally go to on my daily basis, and see how important they are, and how I need to be part of helping them so that they can help me too.
And also the winners are not even really winning. I'm in a interesting spot. You know, I'm an immigrant, grew up relatively poor, but now I work in Silicon Valley. I personally know a number of billionaires and you know, decamillionaires and centimillionaires and blah, blah, blah. And there's a situation that I call being sat on your boat, because they'll go and like buy a yacht, and, you know, you're on their yacht and they're still sat on their yacht. And you're like, oh, this wasn't everything. And like, I don't think that people recognize that the other part that is missing is the giving back is not just about charity. The giving back is to complete you. Like it is so that you get to be a whole human being. Like owning stuff doesn't make you a whole human being. And I think like we have just forgotten, you know, some of these skills, which are not intrinsically hard skills, but they do require work, and they are also tough to value right now because we don't monetize them, and they actually probably shouldn't be monetized. So everything that is monetizable, we've like pushed all the way to the metal, like pedal to the metal. We can optimize it, you know, scale it, push it out to 100 million, 1 billion people. And then everything that wasn't, just relatively, even if we intrinsically know inside of ourselves that this stuff is important, is not being accelerated in that way. And that creates a type of, you know, imbalance in the heart. Like it creates a void.
Totally agree. And we shouldn't let that happen when we're, you know, after our 60s, when we finish our like productive life, or when we're sick, or when, you know, somebody dies, because those are some triggers that lead people to rethink, you know, what they did in life and start helping. We should be, you know, motivated to do that early on, like when we have the most of our energy, or when we can contribute the most, I guess.
Yeah, and we should put the people on magazines and celebrate the folks, you know, an entrepreneur from the favela that you know, helped to lift 1,500 people around him up, or her up. It's like that could be on the cover of a magazine, that could be featured, as opposed to the very richest people, which oftentimes just have excuses around how it's fine for them to advance inequity in some ways because they're rich. But we have many variations of that story. That's my point. And I'm tired of reading that story many times.
Yeah. And inspiration is key, right? Inspiration and seeing others who did it. It's so important to motivate others to start doing as well. So we need examples. We need lots and lots of examples from everywhere, from, you know, from business, from people from slums.
Well, I'm really glad that you're doing the work that you're doing, because through your accelerator work, through your inclusion work, you are finding a bunch of those examples and supporting those examples. So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and when you meet, and that's also some, when you get involved and when you meet people, they're not just causes, right? They are João, they are Maria, they have names, they have lives. You get involved in their families, you get to understand a little bit better their reality. So for instance, if students, that's one thing that I find that could be beautiful. If we have like, how do you call it, like swaps with students while they're in school, to get to know different realities. I mean, maybe that it will help a little bit to soften that divide when they grow up, or that they, you know, could relate better to each other's reality.
It becomes another person as opposed to some economic concept. Well,
Yeah.
Luisa, I have to go now, but thank you so much for the conversation.
No, thank you, Tom. It was lovely.